May you find all that you seek, traveler. May you find all that you seek, traveler.
The Story of Lysirius by Bresden Smythe. In ancient times, there lived a hero named Lyricus. He fought against the Akhaviri Slavi traders and single-handedly slew hundreds. Despite his valor, Lyricus' army was routed and scattered to the four winds. Lyricus fled into the moors to escape the Akhaviri chariots. Far from the lands of men, Lyricus entered the blasted lands. At the heart of this forsaken landscape, he met the Wirm. The great scaly beast mocked the mighty blows of Lyricus' enchanted spear. It melted the shield fear-struck, gift of the Boethia, with a single blast of its fiery breath. Lyricus, seeing that he could not defeat the creature by force of arms, surrendered. The Wirm intended to devour Lyricus when the hero offered to be its slave and manservant. Ever prideful, the Wirm agreed. Seeing that the Wirm was vulnerable to conceit, Lyricus spoke. O great Wirm! For my first service, I beg that you allow me to polish your one tarnished scale. Indeed, centered between the great wings of the creature was a dull scale, clearly out of reach of its long neck. Its vanity was such that it immediately lowered one wing for Lyricus to climb upon. Once astride the great lizard, Lyricus slid his dagger underneath the scale and into the tender flesh of the beast. Though it spun and twisted in all directions, the Wirm could not get at the hero. Finally it took to the air. Lyricus clung to the neck with all his strength as the Wirm banked, rolled, and dove. Seeing that Lyricus could not be shaken free, the Wirm demanded that he remove the stinging blade. Lyricus answered, "Fly straight on until you see a great army. Destroy that army and I will remove my blade." With a great roar, the scaled creature set off. The Akhaviri army had no chance against the fire-breathing beast. They have never plagued Tamriel since. I have done as you bid. Now sheath your stinger. Roared the Wirm. Knowing that he would be devoured or worse, Lyricus pulled the blade and then leapt from the back of the flying Wirm. Indeed, the foul monster had intended to slay the hero. The Wirm pursued the plummeting Lyricus. Boethia appeared beside the falling hero. Praising him for ultimately destroying the army of Akhavir, she turned him into a raven. Lyricus quickly lost the Wirm in the clouds. Legend has it that the Wirm still lives, though this happened in the first era long ago. The dragon nurses a grudge against Lyricus and all of his kind. It has vowed never again to trust two-legged bearers of weapons. ************** Scholars note, if this legend has a basis in fact, the artifact Fearstruck was utterly destroyed. No other reference to it has ever been found.
Three blessings. May you find all.
Hey visitor. I suppose I can thank Gajava for your intrusion into my manor. You will find no other with that name. I am the last of my family, partly due to my own neglect. I've been a bachelor my whole life, and while it has afforded me much privacy and independence, I also have much to regret about it. If I had children, I could have left a heir in Akamora when I retired. Instead, I had little choice but to leave it in the hands of opportunists like Novus Sinim. He is the one who replaced me as Akamora's lord. Last I heard, the fool was busy leading the city into a civil war.
Southeast region of the Telvanni lands. Southwest region of the Telvanni lands. Taken from your Verfever's Atlas of Morrowind. Northeast region of the Sacred Lands. Taken from your Verfever's Atlas of Morrowind. It's a sea creation myth, and we ate it to become it. There was the striking, and the egg was split into 12 worlds, one for each serpent who had a name, and the names of the serpents were alive and coiled into themselves and became more eggs, for names are self-maters, and the naming went and went. According to the calculations, the random sequence learned very cunningly that fragmentation reserved itself to the left eye. Variation realms were the evidence needed. There was the biting, which broke the 12 worlds and their name eggs, and the biters chewed new names of the lesser serpents until soon death was known to the smallest and your alphabets disappeared but ours did not. The state of rest became worthy of blame, however segmented, so heat was wasted across the right eye. And in mercy we gave to you language that was dead yet walking if you used it, which you did, though transient food forms became problematic. There was the slithering, when scales were now name bites that moved freely, and the dead language speakers bled out into non-talk, which is egg naming. Inverted, which slides into the shedding of more dead, which cannot be redeemed in the hunger quadrant, and now we could no more be detached, for the 12-to-1 only talked unsense except for us, who ate your slithering during trumpet season as the biters poisoned the random sequence until we came and made of it music, as that is the only thing that might save the prey who wore all shapes of confusion not described yet in the calculations. Some of us discovered honor, though more found the idea of moderation, which turned into the identical selection process and we created our eating that way. There was the shedding, who inflated into a sphere of edible communications and this is how the sequence began to find proportion again. The name eggs that had survived without also turning into calculation powder settled and became droop waters, which was the first thing to finally encompass the risks attempted by the striking. Stomach signals wrote a complex document of conditions. This was the variation map, called die. The reaching came, where movements of die progressed across islands of edible communication and food forms. Could stockpile. One reaching unraveled but the coiling at its belly made a virtual star line, which made eating lucid. We slid to the imago and named it cunningly. The waters obeyed and dead names took up their place in the random sequence. The first serpents returned to us in transmissions that answered the alphabet virus which we then consumed at last. By the relative die, we egg-named it and swallowed all source information to preserve the virus and became immortal thereby. Past the star line, dead talking continued. The laying then happened, and we moved into forms that had been granted from the source information of the first serpents, which was gold walking, which is pattern. The scales became intertwined in the random sequence with music that ate forever, which we fed with you. Low forms created a seeking egg but we fed it to the music, too. Then the biter shedding grew sideways into the reception field and new a coiling and mastery was ours born from the calculations. The final name was Tsa Essence and we ate it to become it and there are no more variations. The Uprising in Almalexia. Witness reports from the archives of the Imperial Commission for Post-Simulacrum Restoration. Edited by Atribus Oriel. A word from the editor. The decade of Jagartharn's false reign known as the Imperial Simulacrum, 389 to 399, was a turbulent time for all the Empire, but it can be argued that the chaos culminated in the easternmost province of Morrowind. During the Simulacrum, Morrowind engaged in a border war with Black Marsh, and the holds of Old Ebonheart and Firewatch became locked in a stalemate civil war. The event which preceded and attributed to the ignition of these senseless conflicts was the 391 uprising in Almalexia. During the riots the streets of the capital citadel of Mournhold were overrun by masses of revolting peasantry and the regent of Morrowind, Lord Simicus, was slain. After the fall of Jagartharn, the Commission for Post-Simulacrum Restoration ordered a collecting of witness reports to shed light on events of the revolt. The Commission permitted me to go through their archives and select a number of accounts for publication. In most cases, the interviewees suffered from a severe and may I say convenient amnesia concerning the uprising. The 3 witness reports that I have chosen to publish here, however, give interesting insight into the uprising from 3 very different points of view. Devon Soberies, a rickshaw Did I take part in the uprising? Bevec no. But I saw and knew many who did. I remember this one gang of youngsters particularly well. "We're going to take God's Reach," they were shouting. They had crude clubs and staves in their hands. One boy donned a kettle for a helmet. "Go right ahead, but count me out. I told them. I pictured what their heads would look like on pikes above the city gates. I've lived in Lower Almalexia all my life. The imperial taxes don't mean an Echeman's wife's fart to me. I'm practically a beggar. How are they going to tax me? And I don't think the taxes meant that much to those youths, either. Sure, times are tough, but a shrewd guy always gets by, and there's no unshrewd common folk in this city. But you see, there were these, what's the fancy word for it, aggravators? Anyway, these folks outlanders, most of them on the streets whispering to the commoners' ears. I worked a rickshaw in the city and heard a lot of their talk. One time, this Sirad gal sits down on my cart and begins to talk. You know, the bread is so expensive because the emperor has issued higher tax on Deshan flour. The queen probably went west, because she doesn't care for Morrowind no more. Where's the common folk going to go? That sort of stuff. That sort of drivel. Anyhow, I dropped her off, took my money and paid no further attention. Still think she was getting paid for it. Editor's note: the Outlanders and the Imperial woman the witness refers to were most likely spies and agitators planted by Jagar Tharn, the arch-traitor. Fulries Mendrano, a former household guard. I remember the day Lord General Simicus talked to the people. They were gathered before the main gates of Mournhold, hundreds of them. Mostly peasants and commoners, but I recognized among them some petty noblemen, too. They were disgruntled by the new taxes and displeased with the departure of the Queen. The Lord General walked towards them to soothe their anger, and we encircled him with shields to keep the rabble from reaching him. An imperial taxman had been torn from his carriage and stoned to death in Lower Almalexia the previous day, so we had to be careful. Simicus talked reason, but they would not listen. They kept clamoring for the Queen, justice, bread. One young lad called Simicus Septimus cuckold. I had my long spear at the ready and my arms were keen. My blood was up and I would have done it, but Simicus stayed my hand. I remember how the Lord General looked at me and said, "Ai. The boy does not threaten me. Do not spill his blood." I am thankful he stopped me. Things would have gotten very ugly very fast. Then the rocks started flying. More and more people came, and more rocks flew. Simicus fell into my arms, unconscious, a big gash by his temple. I ordered the retreat and we carried the Lord General back inside Mournhold. Editor's note: though this account suggests that Simicus was grievously wounded by the stones flung at him, the more popular account of his death claims that he died of an assassin's poison dart at a much later stage of the uprising. Naturally, it would be disenchanting had the celebrated hero of the Empire fallen before the rebellion had properly begun. Lev Yvaris, a temple caretaker. The last day of the uprising. Yes, I do recall. I was working in the High Chapel that morning. The fighting had finally reached the streets of Mournhold the night before. I remember there was smoke all over the temple courtyard, from the fires that burned in the bazaar and God's Reach. We were told that Lord Simicus was coming to seek an audience with the goddess. I expected a war council. I thought he would plead with the Mother of Morrowind to end the rebellion. But when they came, not long after morning's first light, I saw Simicus was more fit to receive his last rites from the goddess rather than to counsel with her. He arrived on a stretcher carried by only a handful of his household guards, all of them Dunmer. No imperial soldiers with him. I did not know it at the time, but they had already abandoned him. Editor's note: there is no evidence in support of this claim. Quite possibly the imperial legionnaires were busy with the rebels. They waited till noon, but Lady Almalexia wouldn't summon them. Simicus' strength was withering away along with the spirit of his guards. He made this feeble, defeated gesture with his hand and the stretcher was lifted and they began to depart. Before they left, I overheard the guard captain's instructions to one of the royal couriers. Simicus sent word to all the houses, a call to arms, but not against the people. He would choose their side, against the Empire, with or without the goddess. Maybe drive Cyrodiil out altogether. And then he ended with Hyres Dania. Now that's just a phrase to you foreigners, but for the Dunmer, there's fire in those words. When the right mouth says them, like Narivar once did, they cannot be refused. Maybe Symmachus could have been the one, I don't know. Nothing came of it, of course. Our Lady sees further than we do. Symmachus was dead by dusk, and then they placed some puppet on his wife's throne, and the whole thing was done and dealt with.
What are you doing here? What can Savangia do for you? Savangia is only a slave, Ada. Though Savangia would rather be free, she is happy enough here. Savangia can be with her mate Gajavar.
The Gospel of Saint Dylan. In the days before the coming of Shivi, there lived in solitude the mystic Dylan, who taught the sacred words of the Anticipation Azura. When the lordly armies of Narivar marched towards the wicked towers upon Red Mountain, they stopped at Lost La'athi Urlai, citadel of the shining star. Lordly Narivar ascended the great steps of the fortress and prayed before the high priest Dylan, seeking wisdom and counsel from the mouth of the gods. Wise Dylan, whence do I go? The great Dylan lifted his head, listening to the whines and the tremors of the earth. You go to glory, herald of the coming dawn. Go forth, son of Boethia. Dylan turned to Alandro Sol, shield-bearer of the mighty Lord. Go forth, son of Azura. In 11 days the chimer of Rizdane shall rejoice. As Narivar marched on, Dylan wept grievously, for he had foreseen that Lord's death. So it came to pass that the legions of Indoril and Redoran assaulted Red Mountain, and the treacherous Shermit and traitorous Dmer felled many, including General Narivar. Yet in seclusion, Dylan could see and hear all. In the depths of sleep, Lady Azura approached. Why do you weep, Dylan? Rizdane has brought the Dmer to naught. If you should weep, mourn the loss. Do you not wish to see and rejoice with them? Dylan, exhausted and languid from fasting, looked up to the Lady Azura with eyes filled with tears of blood. Rejoice? Has this always been your way, Mother Soul? You guided great Belith from the kingdoms of the ancestors. You showed him the path to Morrowind, yet how much can you claim as your own, Lady Moonshadow? Did you suffer pangs of grief for our sons and daughters waylaid in the lands of the Wild Ones? Did you weep as your children were burned as torches and mangled for pleasure by the savage kings Nilishi and Hod Hill? What solace have you offered your people, Azura? Moonshadow may be the summit of beauty, but your hand has made these lands an altar of blood and sacrifice. I do not weep for our loss. I weep for you. I can no longer praise your name with my tongue and curse it with my heart. Lady Azura stood up from the bedside, and from that place grew roses and lilies. She grew rigid, withdrawing her hands as though stung by his coldness. Have I not lost a son this night? Does my son Alandro mean nothing? I created him with mine own hands, yet he lies among the ash of Red Mountain. Is my suffering not enough for Rizdane? Dylan looked up from his bed. Alandro Sol is not your son. He is the son of Rizdane. Did you raise him with your own hands? Did you place him to your pap? Your priests and priestesses raised him from birth. Do not claim that which you do not deign to love. Do not claim the chimer as your most cherished, for you have sat idle when we needed you most. Your glory and awe could have ended this war with a simple glance, yet now Lord Narivar and many sons and daughters are dead. They are your last offering, Azura. We both sit upon the summit of La'athi Urlai, so called for your namesake, but no more. Let this place be called Ba'an Urlai, the darkened star. Your powers are diminished here. Moonshadow. Your servants will abandon and forget you. You have betrayed yourself, Azura. You are but the predecessor. You are the anticipation of a nobler lord. Shivi is coming. May Rizdane praise this day, for your machinations are at an end. Azura closed her eyes, and withdrew to the rosy shadows of her realm. Dylan stood up from his bed, and opened the shutters of the fortress. The morning light filled the land but did not fall upon the citadel. 11 hours passed, Scrib gathered about the temple. From the northern horizon, a glimmer was seen unlike anything before. Dylan rose from the steps of Ba'an Erlai and praised the victorious legions, yet no legion of golden armor was seen. A single figure stood upon the horizon, glimmering like a spire of all things precious. Dylan fell upon his knees as the figure approached, for he knew the face of this mare. "Have I not seen your face, my child? Are you not the last of fallen Setha? Are you he whom I seek? Are you Azura reborn? Your faith has brought me here. Dylan, wisest of mystics. Your prayers have been heard. Behold." With a single breath, the darkness that shadowed the temple and citadel was banished and the glorious light, illuminating from the body of a single mare, filled the lands. "Rise up, beloved teacher of Mare. You are my prophet, for we am Shivi." Set placed his hand upon the shoulder of the aged Dylan, and in that moment Dylan's robes shimmered like fire and ice. "Beloved son, you are one of many. Go forth from this place where God has walked and teach my people. The promise of Azura is reborn in me. I give you power over all things that they may be instruments of illumination." Dylan's eyes were filled with bright rays. He closed them for but a moment, and after mighty Set was gone. Praised be the name of Shivi. Let all Resdain rejoice, for a new Lord has come to redeem our people. Dylan gathered his things and hastened to teach the people of the new age of Shivi. He did not turn back, but instead asked the scribe to conceal the dark blemish of Azura from the light of day. The scribe piled stones upon the citadel and hid it in the darkness, as was its namesake. For many centuries, Dylan preached the lessons of Vet and the beloved teachings of Im and Set. He guided House Indoril towards a glorious rebirth and authored many books concerning the glory of Shivi. In his last days, Dylan took a pilgrimage to Suthasil and prayed at the temple. He died on his way to Necrom to pray beside the tomb of Saint Narivar.
How are you? All right, I'm intrigued. Go ahead.
How did you get in here? Does that cat Gajover have any standards at all for who he lets in? Yes, what do you want from me? Ah, you're finally here. Better late than never, I suppose. I need a package delivered to the miners at the Gara's Egg Mine, which is owned by my master, House Indoril Counselor Sorval Tamriel. They've had some trouble with diseased Kwama at the mine, and naturally those miners used up all of their healing scrolls. That's why you'll need to deliver them this spellbook. They should be able to learn a useful spell from it. That way I won't have to solve their problems again in the future. I would send someone of the household, but with the recent Dridria infection it seemed wise to hire a fighter like you. I hope you make up for your lack of punctuality with your sword skills. The mine is located in the Sacred Lands, east of Tamriel Manor. The road between Salen and Hlursis runs east of the mine. If you reach it, you've gone too far. Once you've reached the mine, give this book, along with these instructions, to the miner named Miros. That's all you have to do. You think you can remember all of that? Now, get going.
Miros. I heard of your success at curing the colony. Good news, even if I had wished that the issue never had arisen. For the future, here is a book that should be of use. Superficially it is an entertaining read, if somewhat shallow. If you are intelligent enough to read between the lines, however, as you are, or at least you should be, it reveals a spell that cures common disease. It's not that we are running out of scrolls, but this is a faster and more effective way of dealing with these infections. That said, it's best to not have them happen in the first place. Watch out for your foragers when they come back from their sallies, and better cure them preventively. Good luck, Galdalier. Adventures End. By Varen Lethur. Magnus Firetongue was a mighty Nord warrior, descended from a long line of Nord warriors. As such, he was predisposed at an early age to a life of adventuring around the frozen north, where he had defeated many fearsome beasts of the Skyrim tundra. He had killed his first snow bear at the age of 14, thus passing his rites of passage and showing his tribe that he was a man. After several years spent in this manner, roving around Skyrim looking for challenges to his might, he had become bored with his homeland, and had yearned to travel farther afield. He had known already where he was going. Years spent listening to his elders about tales of fiery Morrowind and its mysterious dark elf inhabitants had piqued his adventuring curiosity. He would be the first of his tribe in many generations to journey into this dark country, and there to make his name. Which was how he found himself now, several months later, sitting alone in a dark and dingy tavern in Balmora. He had come to Vardenfell because he had found that the mainland of Morrowind had been tamed by years of imperial influence. Only Vardenfell, it seemed, had remained relatively pristine for a warrior to adventure in. He sat in a corner and nursed his weak dark elven ale, something the locals called sujamma, whilst listening for any information that may spill out in drunken conversation. In fact, so engrossed was he in eavesdropping the patrons of the tavern, that he failed to notice the cloaked figure approaching his table. He looked up as a shadow fell across him, to find a kindly-looking elf staring down at him with a bemused smile. "I have not seen you around before," he said. "New to Balmora, are you?" Magnus sized him up, and judged that he could easily defeat this man should trouble arise. "I came in on the last ship to see Danim, but there was no interest there for an adventurer like me, so I traveled here on one of those damned insects. Worst ride of my life, and I thought the ship from Skyrim was bad. Damn thing nearly threw me off when it moved." The man before him smiled. "Ah yes, the Silt Striders can be quite an experience for those new to Morrowind. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Davik Ruthes, a healer from up at the temple. Perhaps I could offer you my expertise for your adventuring here on Vardenfell. I know much about the dangers you are likely to face." Magnus considered the man before him, and measured his words carefully. "Thank you for your kind offer, sir, but I believe I will be able to handle it myself. Back in Skyrim I used to wrestle snow wolves with no armor or weapons, and still come out of the fight uninjured, so I doubt there is much to fear from the wildlife here in Morrowind." The man took his bravado without comment, but a slight frown formed on his face. "There are many dangers in Morrowind that you have not faced before, I am sure. Nixhounds that hunt in packs, fierce Kagoyutis, and those blighted cliff racers. You would do well to be wary, as even the commonest of creatures here can carry disease. Many fear the blight, but it is a fact that the common diseases can be just as terrible if left untreated. I could offer you my help in these matters if you would like. As a healer I could teach you simple magic to cure a common disease." The Nord laughed at the man. "I am a great warrior, healer. I fear not your creatures, nor any mere disease. It will take more than a simple cold to fell me. You teach magic though? Perhaps you could teach me to increase my strength, then? I could always do with being able to carry more." "I am sorry, Sira. Said the healer calmly. "As I said, I am a healer only. My expertise does not extend to other magics. Perhaps you could visit the Mages Guild here in Balmora. They may teach you the spells you seek." "Yes, perhaps I will at that. Thank you, healer." With that Magnus got to his feet and headed out into the sunlight, strolling toward the Mages Guild hall. The healer followed him out and trailed him past the guild, before continuing on to the temple to continue his work. Magnus stepped out of the entrance to watch him go, and was sure he saw the healer shake his head as he climbed the steps toward the temple. Once inside the Mages Guild he spoke with the guild master, a rather moody-looking dark elf woman, and was directed to a mage who could teach him a spell to fortify his strength. It took most of the afternoon in practice, but eventually he had mastered its workings, and felt confident enough to strike out the next day. At dawn, he left Balmora by the north gate, heading towards the imperial settlement of Caldera. As he labored along the path, heaving his heavy pack, he thought he saw glimpses of large creatures moving in the rocks around him, but they never revealed themselves, apparently happy to stalk him from afar. As the day wore on and he had still not reached Caldera, he sat down to eat the lunch he had bought in Balmora, bread with slices of thick salty meat, washed down with more sujamma. The attack came from behind him, two large green beasts that he identified as Nixhounds by drawings he had seen in a book at the booksellers in Balmora. There were two of them, and he knew they were the beasts that had shadowed him all day, awaiting their opportunity to strike. He just had time to pull the gleaming Nordic longsword from its scabbard when the first Nixhound leapt at him. He rolled to the side, bringing the sword slashing up into its neck, and the beast crashed to the ground. The second creature did not delay its attack, but charged straight at him, careless of its own life. In one smooth move he spun around the charge, and brought his sword down hard on the animal's back. The Nyx hound was fatally wounded, and dropped like a stone, leaving Magnus to finish it with a blow that severed its neck. Just as he thought the danger had gone, he spotted two more beasts coming toward him, the rest of the pack that had hung back to watch and were now joining the fray. Magnus remembered what the mage had taught him the day before, and soon he felt new strength flowing through his muscles. The other Nyx hounds were killed just as easily as the others, but by then the spell was wilting and the Nord felt his legs give way. The exhaustion hit him hard, and he lay against his pack, too tired to move. His eyes roved the landscape looking for more danger, and soon alighted on movement behind a nearby ridge. Soon, however, he saw that there was no real danger, as a strange small creature ambled over toward him. He believed it to be a scrib, from the description he had been given by an egg miner he had chatted with in the tavern. The scrib approached slowly, cautiously sniffing at the ground before it. It showed little fear as it reached him, but casually began to nibble at the sleeve of his shirt. Feeling some strength returning, he swatted lazily at the creature, knocking it away from him. The animal squealed, before thumping its tail into the ground. Again it came towards him, but this time it gave him a nasty nip on the arm, enough to draw blood. Angered, he smashed a fist onto its head, dazing the creature, which staggered away from him in obvious pain. Good, he thought to himself, perhaps that would teach it caution when around humans. He rested further, lounging against his pack. Glancing up into the sky he saw it was getting late, and the sky was darkening. Where had the time gone, he wondered. There was now no sign of the scrib, but his arm ached and he couldn't seem to muster the strength to get up. His head felt woozy and his thoughts were blurred. All he could focus on were the words of the healer in Balmora. Common diseases can be just as terrible if left untreated, the words echoed in his head. Was that it? Was he diseased? If only he had heeded the healer. He now regretted his time spent learning the strength spell instead. It could not help him now. Yet the Nyx hounds had never even scratched him, unless, surely the little scrib could not have done this. As his eyes dimmed and he fell into unconsciousness, his last thought was of how he had been brought down by such a pathetic creature. It was a most dishonorable way to die. The healer found his body the next day, surrounded by dead Nyx hounds, whilst on a mission of mercy for the temple. He was not surprised to see the man, and found no amusement in noticing that the only mark on his body was a small scrib bite. As he continued on his way he could be heard to say only, "These adventurers, will they never learn?"
Pleasure is all.
Under sun and sky, Outlander. Under sun and sky.
How are you?
3 blessings, Sarah.
I really can't help you, stranger.
We make...
I don't think we've been introduced. Outlander. I'm Travel Braddon. How can I help you? What brings you to this mine, Outlander? Miros takes care about that sort of stuff. He must be somewhere around here. I don't think we've been introduced, Outlander. I'm Miros. How can I help you? The instructions from Galdelier. You're early. Once I'll get the chance, I'll report to Galdelier you delivered it right on time. I hope you didn't have too much trouble with those Dridria wandering around on the paths. Vile creatures if you ask me. Feel free to kill a pair or two on your way back. I should start reading this book Galdelier sent me. I hope I'll be able to fight off any diseases that appear down in the mines anywhere in the future. Miros opens the book and starts reading. A spellbook. Galdelier at his best, of course. The spell is not a difficult one, but the book is a tad beyond my level. Look, you don't know? Anyway, never mind. Thanks for the delivery, and I hope to make the best out of this stupid book.
Welcome to the cliff city of Akamora, Ada.
How wonderful.
What did I
Welcome,
do to
Outlander.
deserve this honor?
Welcome to the cliff city of Akamora, Ada. I heard you had to deliver the package to the Gara's egg mine. Am I glad I chose the Nyx Hound hunt? Anyhow, you did a good job, so here's your payment. Oh, and take these. You might want to fix your boots after a long trip like that. I've given you all the work I had for offer, so if you want some other assignment you will have to ask Lal'alvo Irino.
Judging by your more recent actions, I think you are ready to receive orders from me, Journeyman. Do remember that the guild standing in Akamora is on the line with every task you undertake. Failing is not an option. The Fighters Guild recognizes you, Ada. You are now Ada the Swordsman. Your talents are noteworthy, but some question your depth of devotion. Perform more duties for the Fighters Guild and you will earn your place. Fighters Guild, instructions from an Altmer. Circus Leonos of the Fighters Guild gave me an assignment to transport some sort
There's
of package
someone
for an
watching
Altmer
me.
named
I can
Galdelier
tell.
from the household of House Indoril Counselor Sorval Tamriel. I should make my way south to Tamriel Manor. Circus told me the only way to reach it is a path that starts on the back road of Akamora. I should find the junction a little southwest from the Tyrannat Pari's egg mine. Due to the recent Dridria infestation, Galdelier deemed it safer to send someone from the Fighters Guild with the package to Gara's egg mine. The package contains a book titled An Adventure's End along with instructions. Galdelier told me the mine is located between Tamriel Manor and the road between Salen and Hlursis to the east. A path should run from the road between Salen and Hlursis directly to the mine. Once I've reached the mine I'm supposed to give the package to a miner named Miros. I've delivered the book and the instructions to Miros at the Gara's egg mine. Miros was unable to learn the spell that the book was supposed to teach, but I assume that my job is done nevertheless. I can now make my way back to Circus Leonos in Akamora and collect my reward. Circus Leonos paid me for delivering the package.